guys! Today we're going to be talking about differentiated instruction, which is really important in the classroom. We're going to be going through this really quickly because I've only got 15 minutes to be able to fit in all of this information, and let me tell you, it is a lot. So let's get started by asking what exactly is differentiated instruction. It's the way that we tailor our lessons to the students that we currently have. Instead of going based off of our syllabi, instead of going based off of our curriculum, only we look at the students that we have and we question, did I choose the right lessons? Did I choose the right methods to teach said lessons? Do my students even need this for their futures? And then you go from there and you make changes. Being a good teacher, you want to help them reach their highest potential. But how, you may ask? Very, very good question. Plan early. Beforehand, think about every single different way that somebody can learn. Whether they're a kinesthetic learner like me, where you have to touch things, you have to feel them, see them in front of you, and conceptualize it that way. Or if they're an audible learner and they have to hear a lecture to be able to understand something. Or if they are more of a visual learner and they would prefer to have a video, or they'd prefer to watch a movie about it, or if they need to see something in person. Think about the different ways that somebody could learn and absorb that information, whether through text, video, sound, whatever. Plan little ideas before you even teach that class. You might not even use half of them, but it's good to be prepared of that. Then when you meet your students, you gauge the level, and everything is a last-minute decision. Teaching is a series of last-minute decisions that are planned meticulously for weeks. Try teaching a class, you'll know what I mean. So what kind of changes can we go through? What kind of last-minute decisions are made? And how can lessons be adapted? Incredibly good question. Every single decision can end up being last minute. I walked into my classroom once at 9 a.m. expecting to have my 9 a.m. class begin. And it was canceled. So my last-minute decision was to instead get something else done, or prepare something else for my students for the next time that I got to see them. Sometimes I walk in and 30 minutes later my class will start, and so I had to choose what parts of my lesson I was going to use that would benefit my students. It's just being adaptable to the world around you. The content could change. So I'm going to use English Comp. I really love English Comp. So if you're in English Comp and you're supposed to be writing a report or an essay on something, maybe a student has no interest in the book that most people are reading. Let's say that you are requiring everyone to write a book report on Jane Eyre. And all the boys' eyes roll in the back of their heads, and probably some of the girls too. I mean, come on. Is that required to pass English Comp? No! You don't have to write a report on Jane Eyre. Write a report on something else. So this student can choose the content. Instead, a teacher could say, choose your favorite book, or choose your favorite film even. Just write an essay. As long as you're using APA, or MLA, depending on what kind of a teacher you are, as long as you are following the rules that I have stated and you're following all the pieces that I put in my rubric, have at it. Have fun. Go for it. As long as they're learning. So you want all your students to relate to the class. The next thing would be the process, the methods of which the student comes to the point of understanding could change. For example, the partners that you could have, maybe I would want to have my best friend as my partner so we could talk all the time. That would not help me with learning. It would help my emotional health, but maybe I need somebody who's different from me. So instead, I could get a new partner, and that partner would be able to help bolster my weaknesses while I'll bolster their weaknesses. It might seem random when your teacher gives you a seating chart, or if your teacher gives you a partner, but it's actually really well thought out, and it's there to bring the best out of you. So students could also spend time reading in a more comfortable position instead of sitting at their desks. They could read on a screen instead of paper, but they're digesting the same information. For example, you could be reading a report on the way that plastic is made, or on the way that an iPhone is produced. Or you could watch a video on that as well. You're still digesting the same information, maybe even from the same source, but it helps people with their different learning styles, especially when it comes to people in the deaf or the blind community. If you require them to watch a video, they're not going to be able to pass your class. And that ends up being incredibly discriminatory. And it's at the same time very disgruntling and disappointing, and you feel like you failed. So it's really good for a teacher to encourage their student to become the best that they can be with the life they've been given. So if you are, for example, my younger brother is, he has polio, so he can't walk. But if he were in an exercise class, his teacher would help him work out the muscles that he still has use of, instead of telling him that he's a terrible person for not being able to run a mile. It's tailoring the lesson based off of the kid that you have, kid or teen or adult. This is good even in college. So the product, the final product, could also change. Like I said before about the English comp class, I'm going to stick with that. So let's say that you're in an English comp class, in an English comp class, and you do not want to write another book report on Leo Tolstoy. Oh, come on. I do not want to read another Tolstoy book. So, your teacher realizes that you are not able to learn well through reading. Instead, your teacher cares enough to tell you instead you are allowed to write a report on the entirety of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Or you could film a video about your thoughts on it, as long as you are following the same gist. As long as you're reading off your report, your speech, it would still be the same final product. It would still be the same class with a different final product, but you are learning how to use things. I think it works out really well for certain students to be able to give a video response instead of a written response. So yeah, that is another way that things can change. So we got to go through these a little bit faster. So how does the teacher prep the classroom and the students for this? Academic assessment. He assesses the knowledge first. Like I said earlier, test them, look at things that happened last year, but move forward and see how they can evolve. And it continues that the entire school year. Don't judge someone based off of week one's version of them. Think about you on week one. It's different from even this week, right? The way that you process information, the way that you're feeling, it's different. Teachers learn to understand that, and they're trying their best. Next would be understanding. This teacher would try to find out what the students are interested in, what they like, what they enjoy, so they can get the interest into the lessons. For example, I live and work in China, and the television shows the kids watch here are totally different. If I tried to work SpongeBob into a lesson, it would not click with kids in China the way that it would with a lot of kids in America, or Gravity Falls, or whatever kids are watching now. I'm too old. In China, instead, is Peppa Pig. As soon as I put Peppa Pig into my PowerPoints when I was teaching family, the kids learned every single word. They didn't like it when it was my hand-drawn puppets that I'd taken hours on. They wanted Peppa Pig. And I knew my kids well enough to adapt my lesson to what they wanted, not what I was expecting or wishing for. And that is a very important thing as a teacher, is being willing to adapt the lesson that you want inside so badly, and realize that you're there for the students, not for what you're wanting to, not the methods that you're wanting to teach. My students still learned my lesson. Another good way is looking at their learning styles. Like I said before, the different learning styles, you have to learn what those are, and assess each student, and maybe give them tailored projects depending on the class that you're in. So here are different ways between a traditional classroom and a differentiated classroom. I took this from our OER that we were given for class. So, and I only took some of them, and I'm not going to go over them all because I don't have much time left. But you can have a look-see. There, you've seen it. You've read over it. Maybe. You can pause the video and go back. So let's look at our expectations. Expectations versus reality, my favorite thing. What does it look like? Whatever you want. Don't expect your differentiated instructing methods to look identical to anybody else, because it also goes based off of the teacher that you are. Your methods are not the methods of the teacher, even in the classroom next to you. Even if you're working for the same school, been trained by the same person, you are going to be different. The teachers here in my school that I have trained have very different teaching methods from me. but it's not wrong, it's not bad, it is good because they are learning their own voice as a teacher, and they are learning their own students, and they're adapting to that. And that is probably one of the most beautiful things about being a teacher, is that we don't stop learning. So it'll look different every single day, depending on who's there. My students, half of them aren't there one day because the flu has hit the kindergarten. So I will adapt a lesson based off of the children who are there. If I have the active kids, we're going to have an outdoor lesson to talk about English words instead of an indoor lesson to talk about English words. If I've got the quiet kids who would much rather sit, we're going to sit and we're going to have a quiet conversation. And it works for them. And I love that I get to tailor my lessons to the children that I have. So let's look at some examples. I'll give you examples of classroom practices that don't fit in with the ideals. Remember that a couple slides ago I was showing you the two different ways of the non-differentiated instructional classroom and a differentiated instructional classroom. We're going to look at some of these examples and we're going to talk about them. So let's say I only give you my lesson from a lecture. Let's say that this particular lesson, you're only looking at this. I'm so sorry. So this would only help the audible learner. There are a lot of people who need to have that visual aid, like this PowerPoint presentation, or the Prezi, excuse me. It only helps the audible learner if you're only listening to a lecture and you're not engaging the mind by giving them examples or having them speak or participate in that class. The social learner is going to shrivel up and die inside. They need to talk. It's not a bad thing. They need that talk. It doesn't promote student interaction either, which honestly, as somebody who needs to have a connection with the people that I'm around, it not going to work. Instead, teachers should ask questions while speaking or provide multiple ways to learn that same subject. Have your lecture, of course, but use videos, music, props, or even a worksheet, depending on who you are, depending on the students that you have. You do you. So let's say you're grouping students at the beginning of the year based off the previous year's achievement scores. No way. Don't do that. Maybe at the beginning of the year, but be willing to adapt because students change. It doesn't grow with the students. It's assuming they're going to stay the same from last year to this year and blah, 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 blah. It doesn't help the students improve. So instead, group them off based off of current scores. Constantly test, constantly watch, and help see who is the introvert, who is the extrovert. Look at what they have happening at home. If you're dealing with kids, the things that happen with mom and dad will affect them greatly. If they're having a bad day, don't call them a bad kid. Just understand they've got a rough life and adapt your lesson to their needs at that moment. Adapt, 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 adapt. Giving bonus points only for classroom participation. I was an introvert in school. I would have gotten no bonus points if that happened. So these kids who are like me, I would not have been able to get any bonus points for that. So instead, teachers should give multiple ways for a student to earn bonus points. Don't glorify one way of learning or interacting with the lesson over another. Allow a student to choose for themselves if they want to earn bonus points and for what. They could be earned by writing a paper, making a concept map, creating a presentation on the lesson content, classroom participation, presenting a speech. Every single person has their own style. Maybe, depending on the class, maybe draw a painting about the subject that you're working on, just to show that you understand the concept. Art is a great way to show what you know and what you wish to know and what you wish to learn. Don't knock it till you try it, right? So, the benefits. Where do I begin? The teachers who have implemented it and understood how to plan early for the kids that they have and have different ideas depending on the lessons they have, they realize it's not extra work, honestly. It's not that hard. As soon as you learn your students, it's going to start clicking in your brain. It's going to get easier. But just know that in your classrooms, the most important thing is the relationships that you have with them. As long as you've got good relationships, you're good. Thank you.